right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are. Maybe an unfamiliar voice for some folks, in particular on this client success webinar series here that we have. I'm covering for Steve Tompkins here today, but hopefully not an unfamiliar voice to a lot of you. My name is Connor Quinn. I work in our client success department, working with both partners and our direct clients. So I will be covering our session here today, which is covering our payroll year end and specifically payroll year end for the US. We are doing sessions dedicated for Canada year end as well, and there will be multiple sessions of each. This is our first session on US year end for payroll. The second will be in 2 weeks or I believe actually a month from now, and then we'll have our Canada year end as well in there. Separately, we'll also have a full benefits year end, where that will be more on the HR side. Today, we're going to be focused on payroll specific items. A few updates on, or just a note here before we get into overall session. So Criterion and Sage, we cannot provide any actual tax advice, and none of this should be constituted as tax advice. And if you do have questions or things that come up, your best point of contact will be your tax advisor. Our next couple of slides that we're going to go through right here contain the latest information that we have from the IRS, which we're continuously and constantly monitoring for updates on limits and a couple notes on some other legislation that's been passed as well. So we actually don't have, and there aren't any published limits that we've found at this point. We are continuing to keep an eye on that, and if there are updates, we'll provide it as well. But there have not been any limits published for the 401k, 401k catch-up, and the super catch-up plans that we have seen to date. So just something that we're keeping an eye on and something we'll cover on how to update those limits once they become available. That will be part of the session that we're covering here today. Same goes for flexible spending accounts and health savings accounts. Same idea there. Those limits have not yet been announced at this point. Okay. And the next piece that we've had a lot of questions about on our end as well has to do with overtime reporting. So as of right now, there is no Box 12 code, which was originally published in a draft version of the W-2 in terms of how to report the exempt or deductible overtime wages. That is going to be actually starting in the 2026 tax year. However, for 2025, we will be making an option for Box 14 reporting available. This would be basically an amount of those wages or deductible wages that are eligible through overtime, reported in Box 14, and then that will change for the 2026 tax year after that point. Okay. So just a reminder as we get into this, this is just what we have in terms of documentation and publishing from the IRS. However, if you do have any questions that come up with the system that we get into as we get into that, we do have the Q&A available, and we do have folks who are on here answering and addressing questions as they come up. Right. Okay, so we'll hop into the system here. And again, what we're covering here for today is our payroll year end for the United States. Okay, so this should be familiar to everybody. This is just self-service. Everybody here should be some sort of administrator to get into the admin side of the software. So a lot of what we're doing here today will be looking in the admin side, but there will be a few pieces from the employee's perspective that we'll take a look at here as well. Okay. So to click over to the admin side, and you'll see that I have a bunch of tabs already open in preparation for this. But you can go into HR or into Payroll for either of these. Really any of the modules from here that you have access to. And then you'll need access to the system settings from there. Okay. So the first area that we're going to go over to are our holiday schedules. If you're using timesheets in Criterion, you do need to have a holiday schedule. When we create our timesheets, we're always checking for a holiday schedule that is assigned. That may be a holiday schedule which is blank, but it just needs to cover employees by uh, employee groups. So our holidays are under our settings at the top right, under HR administration and holidays here. Now, the nice thing about this is if you already have existing holiday schedules, maybe you have pretty stable holidays year over year in terms of what are offered to employees and by employee groups. And in that case, you can actually clone your holiday schedule by clicking on the row for that holiday schedule and hitting clone. When you do that, you're going to get a few things that come up. You can clone these across to different employers. So maybe you're adding an employer, or if you're creating a new holiday schedule for an employer, you can clone that over. You don't have to recreate it twice. So you just update the year to 2026 and call this 2026 like that and hit clone. So when that goes through, the one thing you're going to want to just check on these holidays is that any holidays which are maybe on fixed dates of the year, so July 4th, for example, and Christmas Day, always have the same date. If your actual observed holiday for that, should it fall on a holiday, on a weekend or a closed day for your company, you may want to update those dates there. So that would just be something you need to review. And if any other holidays move around as a result of weekends, you'd want to check on those as well. All right, let's save that. Okay. The next thing to consider and to update for each year are payroll schedules. So payroll schedules are going to be based on frequencies here. So you'll see you have various payroll schedules which are set up. Any of these which are used or are recurring that you're using each year, you'll want to create the next year for that. And you would do that by clicking into the payroll schedule itself. And you'll see that you have all of the various years that have already been created. And from there, you just hit new and set the number of pay periods. So the number of pay periods is just going to correspond to which payroll frequency you're on. So for weekly, in this case, it would be 52 pay periods. And you'll see that it will auto pick up the start date from the last or next pay period that would fall in line here. So we'll see that this last pay period ends on 12/20. So when I'm generating my new one, it's going to start from 12/21, which we can see grayed out in here. And when I do that and hit generate, it'll create all of my periods for the next year right there. Okay. Now you can keep going and you can create further years out if you'd like to, but if there are any changes or dates that you'd want to change for those payroll schedules from there, or if you change when your pay dates are, the only thing would be that you'd have to go back and edit or tweak those pay dates if you go out to further years. So you can do that. You can be proactive and schedule those out if you don't have any planned or forecast changes for payroll schedules. That would be something you could do there. Just again, reminders that if you have multiple payroll frequencies for your employer, you should update each and every one of those payroll schedules themselves. Okay. And then another reminder there is just that if those pay dates do fall on any of your holidays, you'll want to make sure that you check and make sure that that pay date does not coincide with that holiday if there's any bank closures or anything along those lines. Okay. Another area that you'll want to review in going into the next year, and these may be notices and things that you're starting to get currently, are tax rates. So anything that's an existing or like hard-coded tax rate like Social Security or Medicare, those are going to be taxes that we are automatically calculating and have in the background, but there may be some specific employer taxes like state unemployment insurance. And if you do get updated rates from your state or for any state that you file in, you would want to go in and add a new employer tax. You'll see this will pull up. We go by tax name. We can just go to get tax name and something like Connecticut SUI. Set my effective date for next year and add the tax. And then whatever my prescribed rate is from that state, I would add that. Now, the later date will supersede any previous dates, and it will apply to any pay dates after the effective date that you set. So as you start to get those, or as those notices come into you from any agencies, you'll want to update those in the tax rates section, and you can future date those based on the notice itself. Okay. One other item of note here is that you will see that there are system labels that are available in taxes as well. So if there are any taxes that you report in box 14 on the W-2, some states will have you report SUI payments in box 14. You can also add the system label for that box to the tax right here. And if you have any questions on that, or if you have any existing taxes or anything that might need that, definitely reach out to us in support and we would be happy to help out. Okay. One other payroll related item to update on a yearly basis, if it comes out and there is an update, would be minimum wage. This is a relatively new, within the last couple years or so, functionality that we've put in place, but this allows you to set minimum wages based on work location geocodes or worksite geocodes for employees. So if there are any states, cities, or municipalities that you are an employer in or operate in that have specific minimum wage requirements, you would be able to update those here on a yearly basis. And so you can see I've gone ahead and added a mocked up new one for New York City, effective on 1/1/2026. So by payroll pay date, these will take effect. So up until the first payroll in 2026, the minimum wage applied for New York work would be the 1650, and then after 1/1/2026, it would move to the 1850 from there. Okay. And then the geocodes are populated based on your postal code. So you would just put in whatever the region postal code is. And this can apply at various levels from city to state to national, as you can see, US federal minimum wage, and they will be checked based on the work location and kind of scale back in superseding order from there based on the lowest at city, then state, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So the next item, and unfortunately, we can't really give any updates on this right now, again, based on the current IRS publications. But 401k, so deduction limits are going to be another thing you need to update on an annual basis. In particular, this will be things like 401ks, FSAs, HSAs, things like that, that will have prescribed annual limits. So once that limit is published, again, we'll come back and can make sure everyone is aware of that. However, what you'll want to do is you do actually want to wait until the last payroll has been run for the year to make this this employee limit or limit on the deduction update effective. That's just so that limit doesn't get pushed out or added to any employee deductions and artificially increase what they're allowed to contribute in the given year. So this would just be a change that you'd want to make once your last payroll for the year has been done. Again, important to know that you should have these deductions being linked together. So if you have multiple 401k base plan offerings, so Roth, traditional, dollar, or percentage, those need to be linked together and share a limit. And if you have questions or concerns on that configuration for pooled deductions, then just let us know and reach out in support there. Okay. All right. Okay. Another thing to consider on deductions is for box 12 reporting purposes. Certain deductions by type will be automatically mapped to certain box codes. So 125 deductions, for example, 401k type deductions will have built-in system label attachments. So they will go to certain box 12 codes just by the type of deduction that they are. However, you also have the ability to just do a override with our box 12 codes here. So if there's a specific box 12 code that needs to be mapped to, I believe 401k is DD. But if there are other codes that you need to have certain deductions mapped to, you would just add the system label for box 12. And you probably already have it in your system if you've filed with us for a tax year already. But if you have any questions or need help adding those codes, just let us know again at the help desk and your support contact, and we'd be happy to help. And I see, just watching Q&A too, I see that Tanya, for box 12, you can do that at any point. As long as it's applied to a deduction year over year, you don't have to manage that every year. So if you already have done the box 12 codes on your applicable deductions, then you don't have to worry about updating it. This year, though, I just would encourage everybody to check that as there were changes and you probably have additional 401k deductions now for the 60 to 63 catch up, which you wouldn't have had previously. So it's always good to just make sure you check the system labels on your deductions. Similarly, you may have income limits that are based on a certain year amount or something like that. So if there's any limits that you have set in incomes, that would be the ceiling amounts here. That would be something to review as well. And additionally, incomes can also have certain box reporting as well. So there might be things like group term life payouts, things of that nature that have to be reported under certain boxes or box codes. Same idea here on your incomes would be certain labels get picked up there. You also have a compensation type. These compensation types may also influence what box it goes into. And if you have questions on what those box codes might be, or what the compensation types may map to, or which to choose, or how that may be used in your system, you can let us know. But basically, these again will directly map to certain box 12 codes. And again, you have the option to override that from the system label applied there. That'll apply to all usages of incomes and deductions. All right. Now, when you're going into your review period for W-2 and you want to compare things on the your W-3 to your W-2, there are a few helpful reports that we have available that you may want to run to do some comparisons. For the case that I have here, I've done a very simple 2025 payroll for just my one employee here. But a couple of reports that'll help you do some comparisons, in particular with the box 12 codes, is to run your income summary report available under settings, payroll module, and reports. So you have your income summary, and then you have your deduction summary as well. This will break down the total by employee, and then you'll get an itemized amount as well at the bottom. So we also have the deduction summary here, and you'll see the breakdown of the deductions for that employee. Now, for your payroll, for an entire calendar year, for anywhere on the order of hundreds to thousands of employees, this will be a much larger report to run, but you will have itemized totals there, again, for each employee. And you can also compare that on the deduction totals report and the income totals report as well, if you're not going to go at an employee to an employee basis. These are broken down, Tanya, by the current pay year, so the entire year. Okay. But again, you might want to do this as a comparison for box one wages, where you're taking the gross amount and subtracting out the 401k contribution as an example from your gross income here, and you have an expected box one total wages amount. as a result. So these are some useful reports that you'd want to run in comparing and validating your W-2 amounts. Okay. And one final report that will be helpful here as well, in comparing and checking your wages and reported amounts on the W-3, as well as individual W-2s, is your taxable wages totals report. So this is all of the taxes that were calculated within your employer for the calendar year. Again, if you operate in multiple states, have more employees in more states, you're going to have a longer list potentially than this. But this will give you a breakdown of wages by tax. And for wages that have limits, they will be capped out at those limits. You'll see here FUTA, for example, and certain state unemployment wages based on those state limits. So another tool that you would want to use, or another report to use against the W-2 and W-3 reports. Okay. Now, getting into actual employee involvement here. So these are all of our sort of payroll and admin checks. Couple of things that once you've done your validation for your W-2s and are ready to generate and send out those W-2s, whether that be printing those W-2s or electronically delivering, or both, for your employees. The next step for you here will be to ensure that you have set up document delivery. This is if you want to electronically publish W-2s to your employees. There's a couple of ways to do that, both in self-service and by email. So you can do it as a self-service document that will go into the employee's documents, and via email to their personal or primary email address. So the document delivery is set up under our system configuration menu item under system settings. And you'll see here that you have various options for what type of document delivery to send. So we have our W-2 document delivery, which is set up here. It's marked as active. I've given it a name of W-2, and I've chosen just for right now to only post it in self-service, but you can also see that you have this option to send by email. So when you check send by email, you can also then check personal email. And what this will do is it will first check if the employee has a secondary or personal email entered into the system. And if they do, it'll send to that. Even if you've checked this off, if they don't have the personal email, it'll just send to their regular default email address. So we know some folks have company emails and then additional personal emails. So depending on where they would want to, or how you want this to be sent out, you can check that to go to their personal email. And again, we have the sort of logic in place to check their personal email, and if there isn't one, to go to their regular email. So one prerequisite that would need to be in place here is you need to choose what folder, or where you want this to go in the employee self-service, or what folder you want it to be called. So I have this W-2 folder, which has been created already, which is done under company documents over here. So you'll see I already have my W-2 folder set up. So you would need to set up a prerequisite folder to have it mapped out. But again, if you've already filed with this, if you've already filed with Criterion or using Criterion for a year, you probably already have this folder set up. But any questions, we're happy to help out with there. Okay. All right. So we also added pretty recently a functionality for employees to effectively opt out of paper delivery of W-2s. And instead, they can choose to have their W-2s only delivered electronically. That is set up for employees in self-service. So this is per employee. You can't set this up for the employee themselves. They have to manually opt into this. But under the settings gear here and under preferences, an employee will have this option here for paperless delivery, tax documents specifically, which if they check this, they'll get a pop-up here, basically saying they agree to receive their tax documents electronically. And if they agree, when you actually go to print a W-2 or print the W-2 report itself, they would be skipped in the printing process. So this basically allows them to opt out of the physical copy of the W-2. Okay. All right. So let me see. Okay. All right. So then if you've gone through, you've done your tax checks, you've done your validations of your W-2 and W-3. From there, we can go to the actual W-3 and W-2 reports. So you can see here under our payroll and reports, we have a tax filing section. So there's a number of reports in here that you may or may not use on a regular basis. You have your 941, for example. Now, if you use another service to file or another service for tax reporting, we'll talk about that at the end here. But you have the two reports here, W-2 and W-3. And you can see here, since I only have the one employee for the 2025, this will all map out correctly. But there is a few things you'll want to double check as a employer when you're looking at this. You'll want to make sure that all of your employer legal information matches. So your FEIN, for example, making sure that that's correct in your employer setup. If there's a discrepancy, you can change that under your employer settings. And then also your primary address. So the address used for your employer comes from your primary work location. So the primary work location for each employer should basically be the legal entity location of that employer. Okay. Um, So those are a couple things to double check there. You'll also again see you have some total amounts here for um, various wages across, of course, in the W-3. And then if we look at our specific W-2, this is our guy Ted Lasso here and his total amounts. So just as an example here, we'll see we have his 401k total amount reported here under box 12 code D. We didn't do anything special for that. That just came from the type of deduction that was set up. So that's automatically been mapped to box 12. And we can see that that amount comes from his deduction over here with his 401k. So his 401k, 7,500. And we can also see that his taxable wages in box one have been reduced by that same amount just as a result of the 401k contributions. So this is how this all kind of flows back through. And if this is good, the next step would be to actually go through and either print or deliver the documents for the employees. Now, importantly, don't do this until you've actually confirmed and run all of your payrolls for the tax year. If you hit publish, this will publish it out, but it would be incomplete, obviously, as of today. So we'll just want to be sure that your calendar year or your payroll year has been completed and you have validated your W-2 and W-3 information before you go ahead and do this publishing. So I've already gone ahead and published the paperless copy here. And we can see that for Ted out in self-service. This will post under resources and under my documents. And then from my documents, it'll always post to this reports folder down here. And it will post under the W-2 folder that we had previously looked at. And each time it gets posted, you'll see the actual year that is posted. So in this case, we have our W-2 for 2025, which we can preview with this little button right here. And we get the same W-2 that we're looking at on the admin side. So from here, the employee can download this. They can take this right to a printer. And this, if they had chosen to only have electronic delivery, would be the end of the story for that employee and your responsibility for distributing the W-2 to them. Okay. And then from there, you would also then publish or print your paper copies, which again would skip any employee that had opted out of electronic delivery. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. And then the one other thing is if you are going to be doing this as a e-file on your own, so maybe you don't use a tax filing service and you only have federal or simple state reporting, you can export this as a text file, basically, which will be the SSA upload format. If you are, so this will be compliant with the SSA upload as an export, but if depending on which states you file with, you may have specific state e-filing requirements and may need to use a third-party service to convert that text file into the state filing format. We have a couple of suggestions that if you have that scenario, we can send you as a follow-up, but just let us know on that. Um, so yes, so you would generate that again once you're ready for your actual filing. Otherwise, you can reach out to us and see what other filing options there may be. So I talked about a couple other filing options, Atrix in particular. Atrix, you would be generating the W-2s through the Atrix tax module there, but it would still be picking up all of the same information that we've already talked about in terms of Box 12 codes and codes for certain incomes and deductions, as well as mapped wages for things like Box 1, Social Security wages, etc. So if you have Atrix or other specific filer questions, I would reach out to us separately here. We just can't quite get into that all on this session here. Okay. So I saw a bunch of questions came in. If there's anything unanswered or needing follow-up, you can definitely, as I've mentioned a few times here, reach back out to us at the Help Center or to your partner support if that is the case. And just as we wrap up here, I will give you guys our actual schedule for the upcoming webinars. So we have another United States year-end session coming up on the 4th, so about a month from now. And if you have anybody or if you have employers in both the US and Canada, or for any partners on the call, we'll have our Canada year-end coming up in 2 weeks, and then the second Canada session a month after that. And then we don't have it out here scheduled just yet, but we'll also have our HR benefits year end. That'll be benefit plans, time off plans, a little bit more HR focus, year end session coming up as well. And that, I think, is that for everybody. Thank you all for attending our Client Success Learning Series here, as always. Steve will be back, I believe, for our next session, but thank you again for everybody coming out.
And real quick, Connor, one thing is for the next year end session for United States, that's a duplicate of this session. So if you attended today, you do not need to attend again. Similarly for Canada, if you only need to attend one of those. Thanks, everyone.